In our Black Wall Street episode, we mentioned the Great Migration, a time when African Americans, after the end of slavery, began to relocate from the South to the northern and Midwestern cities such as Seattle, Oklahoma City, and New York. In this episode, we're going to focus on the migration to New York, specifically Harlem, which is one of New York's most culturally rich neighborhoods. During the 1920s and 30s, Harlem experienced a new wave of African American expression through literature, art, music, and more. Our very own Black Winds team, Chris, Aaron, and Perry, are on location in Harlem right now, ready to bring us live insight from the heart of this historic neighborhood. And of course, I'll be here to teach you the history of this amazing era. Let's talk about the Harlem Renaissance. Harlem has been known to be a Black cultural hub in New York for decades, but it didn't start off that way. After the Civil War, Harlem had a growing population of Jewish, German, and Italian families. African American families already in New York were living in Manhattan, but in harsh conditions. With slumlords and white landlords refusing to rent to them, many African Americans found themselves in a small area that they were able to occupy with little to no other options. During the development of the Interborough Rapid Transit, or IRT subway system in 1904, housing developers built hundreds of apartment homes with the anticipation that the subway system would attract residents from the lower Manhattan area. The subway not only made Harlem accessible, but also made other boroughs easily accessible. This caused the homes in the area to remain vacant or unable to be sold, until a wealthy real estate agent, Philip A. Payton, changed the game. Philip Payton Jr., also known as the father of Harlem, was an entrepreneur and real estate agent. After the subway system was built, Payton saw the opportunity to fill the vacant apartment homes and buildings in the area with African American families, including those migrating to the city. He started the Afro-American Realty Company and owned over 20 apartment homes within Harlem. By 1917, he sold 6 apartment complexes in one sale, making $1.5 million, which would be equivalent to $30 million in 2021. Although he passed away in 1917 before the Harlem Renaissance began, his contribution to making Harlem a safe haven for migrating Black Americans played a pivotal role in shaping what came next. Between 1914 and 1920, Harlem's Black population grew from 50,000 to 80,000. This demographic shift occurred during the nationwide rise of jazz music and dance, marking the beginning of the Jazz Age. Notable artists like Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Bessie Smith, and Edward Kid Ory emerged during this period, making significant debuts to the jazz scene across the country.
The connection between the Renaissance and the jazz era. Let's see, it will go back to the 369 Regiment. These gentlemen came out of the place known as the Cliff Club. They were the first African-American regiment to fight in World War I. They go over to Europe. They take jazz music with them, and that became a big explosion. Then they come back. Now you have all these great jazz musicians that are coming out of this. You have people like Duke Ellington, Billy Strayhorn, the Billie Holidays. You have all these different musicians that are making their way to New York City to be a part of what was going on inside of Harlem. And all of these people that just came here, and jazz became our voice. And that's how we were able to express ourselves, was through jazz music.
Hotspots like the Apollo Theater and the Lafayette Theater were among the numerous popular clubs that thrived during the nightlife in Harlem. These venues featured a variety of talents, ranging from band performances and concerts to Broadway shows and lively parties. To get a real taste of the jazz age that helped define Harlem during this vibrant era, we're going live to the Black Winds team at the National Jazz Museum, where the legacy of legends like Duke Ellington still echo.
What up, y'all? We are at the National Jazz Museum in Harlem. We're just checking out the space, and I think they're about to do a live performance in a few minutes. Y'all ready for that?
By 1925, we also saw an emergence of African American writers and poets coming to the forefront. Many literary writers were becoming well known throughout Harlem for their works that touched on various themes within Black culture and were being viewed and critiqued by both Black and white critics. Topics such as political climate, Black identity, racial discrimination, and the Black experience of the times were common among the artists as they told their stories and their point of view, allowing them an outlet of expression that had never before been amplified.
It gave us the opportunity, or gave them, the writers, the opportunity to share their stories. So just think about it. If you were told that you had no history or you didn't matter, but now I can put pen to paper and prove you wrong. So now I'm able to go tell my story, go tell it to a mountain. So Nelson Hudson, she could tell her story, and that just opened up the wealth of history, pride, pain, all of that was able to be put to pen and say, you know what, we matter, and these are our stories. And even still today, The Invisible Man, something as brilliant as that, I Am Not Your Negro. You have great poems that came out of that time period as well to say, we matter and we're here and we're able to put it in writing, to share to the world, and now everybody can see what we always knew was good. Our stories are just as good as anybody else's.
One of the most notable works from the time was a collection of literary pieces that included fiction, essays, and poetry from various artists. The collection, titled The New Negro, edited by Alan Locke, has been said to have been a reflection of what the Renaissance truly was and how Black life was starting to change for this new generation. One of the well-known writers included in the New Negro collection was the poet, storyteller, and activist Langston Hughes. Hughes began writing poetry as a young teenager and wrote his first novel, The Weary Blues, in 1925, and continued to write amazing pieces of literature until 1964. Known for his unique poems, novels, and plays, his works captured the spirit of the struggles of the Black experience in America, while sometimes also using language inspired by elements of jazz and blues music to help tell his stories. Hughes was pivotal in shaping the literary voice of the Harlem Renaissance with his vibrant narratives and poems. The Black Winds team stumbled upon an exhibit dedicated entirely to Hughes, showcasing the enduring significance of his contributions. Let's check in with our Black Winds team to see what they're up to.
So we just got through checking out the Langston Hughes exhibit over at the New York Public Library.
Yeah.
Prior to that, we were just over across the street at the Harlem Hospital Center checking out a really awesome Harlem Renaissance exhibition they got up on the second floor. And now we are headed over to the Jackie Robinson YMCA
Yes, sir.
to go and check out some more cool installations there.
Yeah, baby.
Back to you, Jazz.
Thanks, Chris. Another well-known contributor to the New Negro was W.E.B. Du Bois. Du Bois is recognized as an important figure who was a big advocate for racial equality and civil rights during the early 20th century. Du Bois was one of the founders of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, most commonly known as the NAACP, which is still operating to this day. Through his contributions in the New Negro, as well as his own personal essays and articles, Du Bois helped define the Renaissance's objectives and values. His works also helped express a sense of racial pride and independence among African Americans, which continues to reach audiences and contributes to change being made today. Other influential writers of the time include Zora Neale Hurston, Claude McKay, and Countee Cullen, to name a few. Things started to take a decline toward the end of the 1920s when the stock market crashed in 1929. As the Great Depression began, Black business owners and publications took a fall and were no longer able to support the arts. By 1932, it is said that 50% of the Black population was unemployed, as they were almost immediately laid off when businesses were cutting costs and their jobs were given to their white counterparts. While the Harlem Renaissance ended in the early 1930s, its impact on Black Americans and how the world viewed us made an everlasting change. Through the works of the arts, whether it was fashion, literature, music, or dance, the world saw African Americans in a new light. No longer were we seen as slaves and victims of racism, but we were now seen as artists, activists, entertainers, and intellectuals. The Harlem Renaissance sparked a revolution for African Americans to have a sense of Black identity and pride that laid a foundation that spread to generations to come. Before we close out, let's reflect on how the Harlem Renaissance continues to influence Black culture today. This artistic movement was not just a historical period, it paved the way for future generations in numerous ways. The first way is through cultural identity and pride. The Harlem Renaissance created a sense of shared culture and pride that we still see in today's artists like Beyoncé. She often includes themes of Black history and empowerment in her music and videos. For example, her visual album Lemonade draws on the Southern Gothic style and includes spoken word pieces that remind us of the Harlem Renaissance's impact on Black literature and poetry. The second is artistic foundations. Today's music, like hip-hop, can trace its roots back to the jazz and blues of the Harlem Renaissance. Kendrick Lamar, a powerful storyteller and songwriter, often uses jazz in his songs. His album To Pimp a Butterfly is filled with jazz sounds and lyrics that nod to that era's celebration of Black culture and critical social commentary. The third is storytelling. The Harlem Renaissance's focus on showing the full scope of Black life influences today's filmmakers like Barry Jenkins. In movies such as Moonlight and If Beale Street Could Talk, Jenkins dives deep into complex stories that explore the layers of identity, society, and emotion, continuing the tradition of rich storytelling started by Harlem Renaissance artists. These examples illustrate how the Harlem Renaissance was more than just a moment in history. It was the beginning of a continuous push for equality and recognition, shaping a wide range of art forms and inspiring artists who champion Black culture today. As you can see, the rich history of the Harlem Renaissance made change for African Americans like myself and the rest of the Black Winds crew to create and teach the next generation a sense of pride and commitment to our community. What can you do to create change for the future? Thank you for watching this episode of Black Winds. We look forward to seeing you next episode.